After my husband's death, I lost all love for my only son, Aaron. When Aaron married Julia, a girl with bright eyes and a sweet smile, I embraced her as the flesh and blood daughter I never had. I opened my house, opened my heart, and even opened the iron box that was not a small problem in the room. Aaron proposed living together with me. "Mom is old, needs someone to take care of her," he said. Julia also smiled sweetly. "We want to be close to Mom to make the family warmer." I, in a fever of love, agreed. I thought I was lucky to have a thoughtful, grateful daughter, but I did not realize the quick fading glances between Aaron and Julia, the feelings of complicit pleasure every time I turned my back. After a while, Julia volunteered to help Mom manage the property documents for the effort. I withdrew a little, but then my weak heart won over my reason. I gave her access to my bank account, my house title, and all my most important papers, thinking it was a sign of absolute trust. Little did I know that the day I gave Julia the property keys was the same day I signed my own rebuttal. At first, our life together went smoothly. Julia kept the house tidy and always had a gentle smile when she talked to me. Aaron seemed busier, often absent for work. I had no doubts they were my family, the only people I had left in the world. But then, small changes began to creep into my life. First, Julia asked me to sign some papers to make it easier to manage the application and property taxes. "It's just a formality, Mom, to make it faster," she explained sweetly. I didn't even need my reading glasses, just glanced at the small print and signed with a smile. Then Aaron convinced me that the house was too big for an old person like me. "You should put our names on it so that if you need a senior care home in the future, we can handle it," Aaron said, his voice full of concern. Julia stood beside him, her hand gently squeezing his, her eyes flashing at me like a hunter waiting for her prey to fall into her trap. A month later, I found that my bank account was almost empty. Julia had prepared the reason. Mom agreed to transfer most of the money to the family for investment. "Did you forget?" Her voice was so sweet that I doubted my own memory. Everything quickly fell into their hands. The house, the savings book, the small shares that my husband and I had worked hard to accumulate throughout our lives, all were legalized into Aaron and Julia's names. I, the loving mother who trusted me absolutely, wished to become a freeloader right in the house that used to be mine. That wasn't all. One evening when I walked into the dining room, Julia looked at me with a cold gaze and ordered in front of Aaron. "Mom, eat in the kitchen. Today's table is only for young families." I stood there, dumbfounded. Aaron didn't say a word, not a single glance at me. The son I once held in my arms now just kept silent, letting his wife raise his mother like a useless enemy. I turned around, trying to hide my tears, dragging myself back into the cold air, my heart numb with pain. Not losing my property, not betraying my appointment, but, for the first time in my life, I deeply felt that I had become invisible in the very family I had devoted myself to building. And at that moment, a glimmer of light flashed in my heart. A thought. A silent oath. I won't let them take everything away so easily. I will take it all back perfectly. No need to cry. No need to beg. I will provide nourishment for life. I knew I couldn't act immediately. People like Julia and Aaron were nothing more than creeps, and predators would never relinquish control easily. I needed time. I needed a demonstration. And most of all, I needed a perfect plan. So I began. Secretly, I began copying everything. The bank transactions they forced me to sign, every unreasonable expense from my account, every verbal promise. They reneged on. I secretly copied Julia's papers in her office where she thought I was too old to be curious or understand. At the same time, I played the role of the frail, resigned mother. I laughed when Julia threw me arrogant orders. I nodded nervously when Aaron lectured me on the need to concentrate assets in younger hands. I even made myself intermittent cups of tea in the corner of the kitchen to make us believe I was completely submissive. But at night, when the house was quiet, I sat alone at the kitchen table, the yellow light shining on my wrinkled but strong eyes. I read every legal document carefully, learning to collect every moment we didn't expect. I started to contact old friends, people who had worked in the legal industry, real estate. Everyone still owed me a few favors. Then the first opportunity appeared. One of the old friends, Jack, now a property lawyer, agreed to meet me. When I spread out the papers, he frowned. "Ruth's mother," Jack said, his voice thick with worms. "They made a lot of dangerous mistakes. These papers show signs of force. A reversal of assets is not possible." I completely cut off my hand. Finally, there was light at the end of this dark road, but I didn't give in. Jack advised me to keep quiet, to gather more evidence. Every move could ruin the whole plan. I obeyed. For the next 2 months, I lived like a shadow in the house. Julia became more and more aware of her true nature, treating me like a maid, making me clean, cook, even clean her underwear. Erin became increasingly cold, bustling with work calls and parties, to which I was never invited. Sometimes the insult was so great that I had to grit my teeth to keep from crying right in front of them. But I did not allow myself to be weak. Every time the feeling of despair overwhelmed me, I reminded myself, just be patient a little longer. Just one more day, just one more week, and then everything would be mine again. The climax was tonight, when Julia threw a big party at the house. A party to celebrate, their official house. I was sent to the kitchen, serving the guests, like a real servant. As I stood rinsing the crystal glasses under the cold tap, listening to the laughter coming from the living room, I knew it was time. I was smiling silently. A real smile for the first time in months. I was ready for a response. And this time I wouldn't leave anyone out. The next morning after the party, I woke up earlier than usual. Julia and Erin were still sleeping in their newly master bedroom. I made myself a cup of coffee, stood silently staring out the window, strangely asking myself to calm down. Today would be the first time in my plan. First, I could leave the house with peace of mind. No big deal. I went straight to Jack's office, the only lawyer I trusted at the moment. With the technical preparation, we took charge of the request to set aside the transfer of property. Evidence of coercion, deception, and exploitation of my mental impairment was presented. Jack also arranged for me to see a psychologist who specialized in deep emotional assessments of the elderly, who had been stripped of their shells. As I sat in the examination room, recounting the months I had spent living like a shadow in my own home, I cried, not from pain, but from relief. I knew that each of those tears would be a powerful piece of evidence against them, but I didn't stop there. On Jack's advice, I also secretly met with a financial expert. He quickly uncovered a series of illegal transactions Julia had made on my behalf, including the mortgage on their personal loan account. I didn't need to imagine that the money would ever be used for family-oriented purposes, as they preached. Within 2 weeks we had built a solid temple structure. And then I took the next step, moving out of the house. I rented a small apartment on the South Coast. Not far enough to be convenient, but far enough away that Erin and Julia wouldn't find me right away. I left a single note on the kitchen table, thanks for the lesson. Now come as I taught you a lesson. No signature. No additional message. I cut off contact. New phone number. New email. No Facebook. No Instagram. I had disappeared from their lives just as they had tried to make me disappear from theirs. The days that followed, Jack said, were the calm before the storm. Julia and Erin had a meltdown. First, the frantic texts. What are you doing, Mom? Come back now. Then they turned into stormy calls. We can talk, Mom, please. I didn't answer any of them. I'd learned my lesson. Silence is the most powerful weapon. When the construction call came, the storm really erupted. Julia took to social media to post more long-winded posts about being betrayed by my lover. The pretexts, the victim, games, all of it just made me more determined. I knew that, deep down. Julia and Erin never thought I was smart enough or strong enough to fight back. They thought I was just a grumpy old woman, too easy to manipulate. They thought I would slowly die in silence, leaving everything to them as a free gift. They were wrong. As the construction day approached, I felt no fear in my heart, no data, only a cold, sharp feeling like a knife honed by measuring techniques. I had suffered too long. I had been despised too deeply now. It was time to take it all back in the most perfect way. On the day of the trial, it was pouring rain. The cool water soothed the comfort of home, like the quiet rhythm of my heart beating faster. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my coat, my eyes harder than ever. No longer the frightened mother, who was constantly afraid. No longer the quiet woman who protected me. Today I was Ruth, and Ruth would fight. Jack met me at the big table. He gently touched my shoulder as if to remind me, "You are not alone. You have prepared for this day." When I entered the courtroom, I saw Julia and Erin already sitting on the other side. Julia wore a gift money dress, light red lipstick, sitting cross-legged in a self-conscious manner. Erin avoided my eyes, constantly tapping on his phone, as if he could escape with just a few swipes of the screen. But I knew. They were afraid. The trial began. Their lawyer opened the screen with a smooth speech about Ruth's free will, about family love and the desire to support the next generation. I laughed. If the love they were talking about was forcing me to sign the transfer of assets when I was still confused by loss and pressure, then sorry, I'd rather be cold. When Jack visited, he started to present cheaply. He showed recordings of calls, text messages, bank documents that showed unclear spending. He called witnesses, psychiatrists, to confirm the psychological complexity that I had guaranteed. Each piece of evidence was like arrows shot straight into Julia and Aaron's mask of deception. I sat still, hands clenched, not allowing myself to waver for even a second. The climax came when Jack played the recording of Julia's best friend. The part where she laughed with her friends about how she had tricked her mother-in-law into signing the papers. Like a stupid donkey. The courtroom was silent. Julia paled. Aaron was rooted to the spot, his face as red as a lobster. I saw Julia's hand run up as she clutched the armrest, her eyes darting around, searching for an excuse. But there was no turning back. The judge looked at them coldly, then turned to me. "Ruth," he said in a calm voice, "do you have anything to say before I make my final judgment?" I stood up. I walked slowly toward the evidence. I didn't need to look at the transcript. Every word I said came from my heart, a heart that had been betrayed but was now reborn. I used to believe that my family was the safest place, that my son and daughter-in-law would love me for who I was, not for what I owned, I said, my voice firm. But love cannot exist where there is greed. I'm not asking for harm. I'm asking for what is mine. The courtroom was so quiet, I could hear the rain outside the window. The first judge spoke slowly. He read the judgmented total default, restoring all property to me and prohibiting Julia and Aaron from accessing my property in any way. The car slid down the table, resounding like a homemade declaration. Julia burst into tears. Aaron, on the other hand, slammed his fists on the table, his face purple with anger. But I just looked at them like strangers, because that was exactly what they had become to me long ago. Jack gently helped me out of the courtroom. "You won, Ruth," he said softly. "There was no justification. You were allowed to be who you were." I walked out of the building, letting the rain wash away all the old pain. The sky cleared in the distance. I couldn't get my property back. I got my self-esteem back. And more than that, I got myself back. After the build, I returned to the house where they had tried to protect money. That house, with every pin, every creak of the wood floors, now served as a vivid reminder that I had fought and won. But that victory had left scars. In the early days, I found myself wandering around the house, touching every wall, every piece of picture frame, as if to double-check that it was really there, still mine. No other hands were controlling me, no words. To make me doubt my worth, I had it all back, but at the same time, I had lost the last illusion of what it was to be called family. Aaron had not called back. Julia, of course, had disappeared as if she had never existed. That was more satisfying than I had expected. Strong. When I opened an old cabinet, I still came across a glass plate from Aaron when he was a child. Scrawled, "I love you, Mom." It was a sweet way, but I learned not to be sad. I started to reorganize my life, starting with the smallest things. I sold off the expensive things Julia had forced me to buy to save family face. The designer bag, the red sofa, all gone. Instead, I made simple, warm things myself, a comfortable old armchair, a soft yellow nightlight. I replanted the garden, which Julia had once considered a waste of time. The small flower beds began to bloom, showing off their brilliant colors in the sunlight, as an affirmation that my life would continue, despite everything. And then, I decided to do something more violent. Open a class to teach Kung Fu to the community. No money. Just because I wanted to build something that really connected people to each other. A secondary situation that money couldn't buy. The first class consisted of only 3 people. A single mother, an old man with a wife, and a young man who had just lost his job. But we laughed together, shared stories of everyday life, and I realized family is not always blood. Sometimes it is woven from spores and understanding. I gradually found joy in the simplest things. One sunny afternoon, I sat on the porch, watching the ocean stretch out in the distance. My old cat curled up in my lap, the gentle sound of the waves like a lullaby from nature. No more Aaron, no more Julia, just me, whole. Stronger than ever. One evening while drinking tea, the phone rang, unknown number. I picked it up, double quotes, Mom, ... "It's me, Aaron." His voice rang small and hesitant. My heart was glad. It took me a few seconds to calm down. "I know," I answered shortly. He hesitated. I'm sorry. I said nothing. I let the silence hang, heavy and fair. "I know you don't have to forgive me," he continued, his voice choked. "But I just want you to know, ... I was wrong." This time I would laugh. Not because I wanted it right away, but because I was no longer burdened by the pain of the past. I had a choice in how to recover because I had reclaimed my life. "You need to learn your lesson, Aaron," I said, my voice soft but obviously determined. "I hope you do someday." And then I would turn to the computer. No need, no anger, just peace. I would return to the tea, to the unfinished book, to my new life. a life that was finally mine. A few months later, my life was still quietly on a new, spiritual path. No more days waiting for Aaron's call. No more nights wondering why it all ended the way it did. I had learned to let go, not because I forgot, but because I chose not to let the pain bind me. The house, the garden, the little craft class, they had all become a part of me, a part of the process of rebuilding myself from the brokenness. With each passing day, I felt more alive, more self-made. One afternoon, as the sunset graced the sky, I received a handwritten letter from Aaron, no embellishments, no reinforcement. Simply, I hope one day you will find a place in your heart to forgive me. Not because I deserve it, but because you deserve peace. I love you. I folded the letter, placing it on the shelf among my favorite books. A reminder that I had overcome, that I had grown beyond the pain. Tonight, I sat on my doorstep, the ocean breeze blowing gently. On my desk was a cup of fragrant tea, an open book, and a warm yellow light. I had not yet decided my worth. No one else was taking over my life. There was only me, complete. And as the stars began to twinkle in the sky, I said to myself, this is not the end. This is just the first chapter of the part of my life that truly belongs to me. If you have ever been hurt by someone close to you, if you have ever sacrificed, suffered, and then been forgotten, remember, you are not alone. Your strength lies not in the noise, but in rising from the quietest wounds. If this story touches you, leave a comment below. I want to hear your story. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on more heart-wrenchingly real action like this. Thank you for listening.